Hey everyone, I'm Dylan McKean and this is The Bench. In today's episode, we're going to meet an Olympian who is the only person to represent his country in the 2010 Vancouver Winter Olympics. Let's go meet him and find out what he's all about. So guys, I'm here with Olympian and five-time X Games competitor, Errol Kerr. Errol, how you doing, man?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks so much for coming out to Squaw Valley today.
Of course, thanks for having us. So you have achieved a lot in your skiing career. You've done the skier cross for the Olympics, X Games, and you're the only Jamaican skier at the Olympics in 2010. What got you into skiing? What was that moment for you?
Well, actually, so on my mom's side of the family, skiing is just what they did. So for me, it wasn't really my choice. As a little kid, luckily my mom got me out on a pair of skis by the age of 3 and started skiing then, started racing by the age of 10 and actually came up through the Alpine program. So racing downhill, Super G, and giant slalom. And then after my PG year of college, I didn't really make the cut in that, and the sport of ski cross was just coming about. So went off to the Honda Ski Tour and the Jeep King of the Mountain events, and from those was able to qualify into X Games. Got 5th place at X Games, and all of a sudden I was on the U.S. skier cross team off to Europe to go race World Cup skier cross.
So tell us a little bit more about that. How was that transition from the racing world into the skier cross world?
Well, the transition from alpine racing to skier cross actually came really natural for me because I grew up racing motocross and BMX. So once you kind of throw all those disciplines together and put a pair of skis under your feet, all of a sudden the sport of ski cross is just naturally born. So luckily, right from the very get-go, I was naturally very talented at ski cross. The first ski cross that I went to, Darren Rawls was there, and he actually qualified first, and I qualified second, 1/100th of a second behind him. So right out of the start gate, I knew I had the speed, and then it was time to just build the intensity once you're racing head-to-head to go all the way with it.
Perfect. So just for the people that don't know what skier cross is, can you kind of just tell us what the event entails?
Yes, so the event of ski cross is you race 4 people at a time. So if you're familiar with motocross or BMX, we actually race out of a forward falling start gate. So the start gate falls forward, all 4 skiers start at the same time, and the first guy to the bottom wins. So we're going over bank turns, big rollers, big tabletops, doubles, all these sort of terrain features that makes for a very, very exciting race. And not only that, you don't have to be a student of ski racing because the first guy to the bottom wins. It's not separated by 100th or, a 10th of a second that you find in alpine, where you really have to be a student of the race to watch one person at a time coming down the hill.
Going to the X Games and Olympics has to be an experience of a lifetime. How about you tell us about your favorite moment?
Well, favorite moment, definitely for the Olympics would be, I got the privilege and honor of carrying the flag into opening ceremonies. So, the whole world is watching opening ceremonies and you're walking to that stadium, and I was actually a lot more nervous to carry the flag into the stadium than I was before I went racing. Because for racing, we're racing all the same people who race on the World Cup, but you get one opportunity to carry that flag and represent your country coming into the Winter Olympics.
And you were the only person on the ski racing team. How was that?
I was the only person to represent Jamaica in Vancouver. The bobsled team didn't qualify that year, so it was a tremendous honor and a privilege to bring that country to the world stage and compete in the Winter Olympics for them.
And you told me earlier that you were actually the only person from the Caribbean to hold the 9th place title?
Well, I'm the highest finisher from the Caribbean in the Winter Olympics. So 9th place is the highest that a Caribbean athlete has finished in the Winter Olympics thus far.
So you hold the title right now, which is amazing. Let's take a step back into the X Games. What about the X Games? What stood out for you with that experience?
Well, for the X Games, I grew up racing motocross, BMX, and X Games was just such an iconic, it was just kind of the pinnacle of action sports. And so I remember the first year that I qualified, I got so excited when you get that letter in the mail from ESPN that you qualified for X Games. Man, the light bulbs just go off, and then you get ready, and then you get there, and it's just an amazing show. And for anybody that's in our age demographic, I think they need to get a chance just to go to X Games once. It's the pinnacle of action sports, and the energy that's there is just incredible. And
don't go anywhere. After the break, Errol's going to teach us some tips and tricks to get you skiing some insane lines like you see behind us. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Bench, everyone. I'm your host, Dylan McKean. If you guys are just joining us, we've been speaking to Errol about his skiing career, and now he's going to teach us some tips and tricks about how to get off the groomers and into the chutes. So Errol, take us through some of the basic tips and tricks that you want to teach a skier to make them better and more advanced and more comfortable with skiing steeps.
Well, actually, that's one of my favorite things to do, is to get people a little bit outside their comfort zone. So, once you're an advanced, intermediate or something, and you want to start taking it off into some of that steeper terrain, well, one of the first steps I tell them is once you get into something that's a little more challenging, their natural tendency is to back off. For some reason in skiing, when the light gets flat and everything, we get into the back seat. So then we start skiing on our heels. Well, when we're skiing on our heels, we're not using the shovel of our ski anymore, and it's really hard to make those turns. So what I tell everyone is that we want a good strong pole plant out towards the front and tip of our skis, and that helps to reset our hips and bring everything up and forward each turn. So at the end of each turn, a nice strong pole plant, and we're bringing everything up and forward. So I want my knees stacked over my toes, and my hips stacked over my knees, and my shoulders stacked over my knees. And that gets me in a nice athletic position where I'm ready to attack that steeper terrain.
So proper position is ultimately the best idea to have when skiing on the steeps. But while you're skiing through crud like this, what is also important?
Well, skiing through crud is, those are actually different techniques. So skiing through crud, another thing, that I'll see, especially nowadays, we have really rockered skis and full tilt boots. You can get to this habit of where you just sit on your tails, and you see people that are going through and their tips are just wheeling above the snow. So it's about finding that balance point on your ski. And in the crud is really important to find that balance point. If you're too far forward, your tips are gonna dive and you're gonna go over. And if you're too far back, you're actually just wheeling the ski, and it's really tiring. So it's just moving that center of mass and finding that proper balance point on your skis in the crud really makes a difference. Another good tip, once you start challenging yourself on steeper terrain, is to keep your momentum moving. So don't make one or two turns and then stop because you get scared. It is so much harder to get going again. So that's something that I work a lot with people, is to just keep nice, smooth turns down something that they're a little intimidated by or something. It'll really help them make it down a run that they haven't accomplished yet.
When going up into a chute, or maybe even a tree line that you're not really comfortable with, what are some ideas or pointers that you want to give someone before they send it down a line?
Well, once you get into the trees, now it's something there where we want to make sure that they have the ability to, make it around the trees where we're not going to hit them. But something, again, we want that nice strong pole plant, and to start looking ahead. Once you start getting into the trees or chutes or something that's narrower, don't look right at your tips. You want to plan your turns 2-3 turns in advance, that way you know where you're going to be, and it'll make it a lot easier for you.
Cool, so you ready to show us some tips and tricks in action?
I'm going to do my best.
Let's do it. And that wraps up this episode of The Bench. Be sure to tune in next week, as we'll be featuring another outstanding athlete and learning all about them. And a huge shout out to Errol Kerr and Squaw Valley for helping make this episode of The Bench possible. I'm Dylan McKean. This is The Bench. I'll see you next week.